As a data engineer, or should I say, data engineering is one of the most sought after roles in tech in 2025. If you've heard anything about AI, AI lives off of models and models live off of data. And the people who put all that magic together, or at least enable that to happen, are data engineers. Today, I'm extremely excited to be having William with us on the podcast today. One, because he's a data engineer, so he's at the art of at the heart of every amazing thing happening in that space. But secondly, he's been a huge supporter of this platform. Always giving us a shout out on LinkedIn. So really excited to have you on the podcast today. Welcome, William.
I appreciate it, man. When you sent me the invitation to come on the podcast, I was like, okay, this is perfect because I saw your podcast last year, and I was like, oh, he's giving some great insight. He was talking about certifications, and I was like, okay, now is my chance to kind of lend my insight into data engineering.
That is amazing. And for those, one of the things that I found that was really interesting about your background, one is like all of the amazing, companies that you've worked at. I really want to dive into that later on. But it's also that you're the founder of Before the Billions LLC, helping aspiring tech professionals, break into tech and grow into tech and things like that. But if we take it all to the beginning, right? Like, why did you even decide to start on this journey in tech?
Yeah, I can say full heartedly is that it came from my dad. My dad, he was telling me to go into the IT field. I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna follow in his footsteps because he was into IT. He's a person who's just always been into like art and creative things and technology. And I was like, okay, well, let me try to emulate him. So I went to Georgia State University and I pursued my degree in computer science with a specialization in databases and knowledge based systems. And that's really how I got started. I got my degree and I got an internship at Global Payments, which is a global company. It's a payment processing in the payment processing space, a fintech company. And I gained some insight into the software engineering side and also the information security side as well. So that's really how I started and what kept me going.
That is amazing. So it is good, like that you fact that you had, your dad showing you the ropes, because I think that's the I don't know if it's the good or the bad part of tech these days, is that there's so many influencers, right? Like pulling, nudging, talking about how great tech is and all of that, which I think that's definitely the positive. The negative or downside sometimes is that people get that advice, but they don't get the almost, I don't want to say action, but kind of like the blueprint or the strategy to be able to like turn that passion or that, interest into actual actionable steps. And I think that's where like there's always some disconnect. So, how important was it for you to have not only like someone nudging you in that direction, but to be able to build on that with some actionable steps that you're able to take to get you to where you are today?
I mean, I can't say with full transparency, it's just that the fact that I had my dad, I had somebody there to guide me, helped me out tremendously. I mean, there's a lot of people in life where it can be extremely difficult to go on this path of getting into tech or getting into a STEM field because a lot of people think that it's going to be too difficult or too hard. But to have somebody there to push you and tell you that you can do it, or even like encourage you and say, hey, this is what you get at the end outside of just the money, is a lot of benefits to being in tech. But just having someone in there with me really helped me on my journey. I mean, when there were times when I was in school, I thought I was gonna quit. I was like, I got my first F in my freshman year. I was like, yeah, this might not be for me. It wasn't even a computer science class. But I thought about it and I said, it is I'm doing this not only for myself, but I'm doing it for my family and my friends.
Mm.
Not just me in this, and that's how I think about it. Even as a professional, is that I do all these things not only for myself but also for my family as well.
William, are you somehow like uh looking into my next content?
Oh,
Because literally that's one of the things I'm talking about next is people underestimate the impact of purpose, right? Like you know, and initially when I wrote the content, one of the things that I said, which is true, is one of the things that I hated for some reason, growing up, both as an entrepreneur, professional, etc., whatever you call it, was like this idea of find your purpose, right? Like, and not because it's something bad, but because it just felt so cliche and it didn't make sense. But the more that I drilled into what it meant, right? Like it's that idea of doing something that's bigger than yourself. And it's funny because like we've all been through it where we say, oh, I'm gonna take this course or I'm gonna do this thing, and you find a way to negotiate with yourself. But if you tell your friend like you're gonna pull up on them at a certain time and you're all gonna go do something, you're most likely gonna be there. Why? Because you can't, like, it's hard to negotiate with a word that you put out and like you feel like your integrity is tied to it. But when it's just you find a way to negotiate with yourself and say, oh, I'm gonna do it
Mhm.
tomorrow or some other time. So finding your purpose, again, this is much later, right? Like that's why, even though it's cliche, it makes a lot of sense to me now. It's that when you find a way to tie something bigger to it beyond just, oh, I can make six figures, right? Or I could do this. There's so many things that are good that people can do that they never do, not because it's not good, but just there's not enough things that's tying them to that thing to make them want to do it. So how important was that in your journey?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's kind of like this, right? So at one point in my life, and this is before the pandemic, I was 300 pounds. And I was like, Man, it's so hard to lose weight." And again, my dad came in and he trained me. And having somebody there with me in the gym extremely helped. Like, I mean, I would make so many excuses of, okay, I can't really do this. But one of the things that really helped me was just having somebody there to hold me accountable, or to, okay, we're meeting up here. And I know if I'm not meeting him at this time, then he's going to, talk bad about me or something like that, or try and make it so that way I feel bad about missing out. But with his help, I was able to lose, it's like almost 100, it's like 80 pounds or something like that. I lost like 80 pounds, got all the way down to 220 pounds through his help, just having somebody there to hold me accountable and guide me. Because, some people, they may not know what to do. It's kind of like, just like in the tech market, trying to get a job, right? You go into the gym, you have a whole bunch of machines. There's a whole bunch of different ways of getting to your result of losing weight. But a lot of people don't have a plan. So you don't have a plan. You go in there, you do something, you get on the treadmill, and then that you call it a day. You got to be able to have a plan of what you're going to do when you get there and how long it's going to take you, and stick to that time. Stick to that time frame so that way you can actually hold yourself accountable as well.
That is so amazing. And someone said in a shout out, salute, hey John, welcome to the stream. It says salutes to BTB.
Mhm. Yeah,
Uh
that's my nickname for Before the Billions.
oh, gotcha. Thank you, John. And I also have another, like, for anyone just joining the stream. We hope you're enjoying the conversation. Don't forget to like and share it and leave any questions or shout out that you may have for William in the chat. So this is Working in Tech Podcast, and today's guest, again, for you if you're just joining, is William. Is the founder of Before the Billions and also a data engineer. And to kind of like put you on the spot a little bit, right? I know data engineering is a very, very, very complex field, but if you could do like it's not even a 101, it's a 001, right? Like for anyone who doesn't even understand what data engineering is, what's the one easiest way to describe it? And like, what's the way for people to either think about it or to build a skill towards getting into that field?
Okay, so kind of like a three-part question, but the first part is, like, how would I describe it? As a data engineer, you are, the simplest way of explaining it is that we're moving data from one place to the other, and data is just information. So we're moving information from one place to the other. The second part, which is how would I can give like an example, right, or an analogy, is that everybody here has either used like some sort of delivery service or Amazon or something like that. So let's stick with Amazon, right? So let's say you order something on Amazon. You put in the information for whatever product that you want to buy. Then they take in that information. It's sent over to Amazon, and they say, okay, well, we want to pull it from our warehouse. So the warehouse workers get the information. They put your product into a box or assemble your product and put it into a box and label it with with the correct information, and then send it to the driver, and the driver gives it to you at your front desk, at your front door, or at your business. All the information is available through a pipeline that a data engineer builds. So that's the simplest way of explaining it, of what a data engineer does. And we're in charge of all of the infrastructure and to make sure that that actually happens from beginning to end. And how do you get into this industry and scale into it? It's no set path, right? But the path that I went on was getting my degree at Georgia State and getting internships. A lot of people are in school right now, and I would suggest getting an internship while you're still in school as either a sophomore, junior, or a senior, because that helped me out tremendously. And a lot of the time, if you get an internship, you can then get a full-time offer. But let's say you didn't go to college. There's a lot of people who go to boot camps, right? There's a lot of people who get certifications. Now, the tricky part about it is that accountability piece that we talked about before is that it's kind of hard for you to do self-study, right? So that it's a harder way of doing it, but it's still possible, because I do know some data engineers who did the self-study route. And then same thing with a boot camp. A boot camp is a boot camp. So understand that they are there to hold you accountable and make sure that you're able to get to that job that you're looking for. Plus, you're going to be spending money as well. Whatever route you go, you're going to be spending some sort of money on either courses, certifications, boot camps, whatever it is. And another way I would say is joining workforce development organizations to help you gain those skills as well.
And like, for anyone who wants to brute force their way into it, what's the way to do that? Like, they don't want to go to a boot camp, they don't want to get a degree. Maybe just like in terms of like the skills to learn or like the platforms to get familiar with, what are those specifically?
Yeah, so we have several courses that you can go to. Udemy, Coursera, I think a Cloud Guru is another one. And then you also can, what I would suggest, if you don't want to go to, don't want to go to school, don't want to go to a boot camp, but just want to gain the skill itself, is to work on a lot of projects, right? But you have to make people care about the project that you're working on, and working on like open source projects that you can find on either GitHub or Kaggle.com. Another resource that I would suggest any data professional to use, because Kaggle has like a whole bunch of data that you can just test on, even as a professional. If you just want to learn something new and use whatever tool it is, you can use Kaggle. But I would always suggest that people, if you're interested in data engineering, look at the tools that people use. This is what separates a lot of people when you're talking about who's actually passionate about being in tech versus people who are just kind of like,
we're just talking about it.
Right. It is learning what is going to provide a company value. So look at the job descriptions of what a data engineer does, or like the responsibilities, the tool set that they use, and then start building projects using that. And another way, cheat code that I found, is that if you get an interview with a company and they give you a take-home project, take their project home, work on it, and then use it in your resume, because it's a project you're using for a specific company. And I've done that before, where I've worked on a project for a company, didn't work there, but I worked on this project. It helped me get a job. So like, that's, and the funny thing is, the project I did was for a hackathon for Georgia State for NCR, which is a National Cash Register. It's a really large payment processing company. And I actually work in their office now. And I worked on their project and I used it in order to on my resume to get a job.
So now you got hired with the employer who's now having you work on the project. It's so
Well,
funny,
yeah.
like how full circle that comes. But,
Well,
but that,
I
go
don't
ahead.
work. I don't work for NCR currently. I work in their tower, but I
Yeah.
work for Cargill now. But it's in
Oh,
the
I see
same
what you mean.
building.
Like in the same building. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, still one full circle regardless, right? At the
Mhm.
end of the day. And again, somebody's already giving you the shout out for it. Very underrated
Yeah.
advice. I agree, Kadisha, 100%. I think that's one of the things that's actually so amazing um about this, podcast is that you get to hear the types of advice that ChatGPT is not going to tell you. Like you can't find it anywhere else. It's very relatable experience, very relatable advice, and thanks for sharing that. So,
No
in
problem.
terms of like how people should be thinking about, navigating their careers or learning, or like I think about it as multiple steps, right? Like there comes the interest, then you have, the skill, then you have, maybe building up interviewing experience, applying to jobs, going through the process and getting the job, right? There's
Mhm.
multiple steps to that. What's something that people miss about getting into tech or don't pay enough attention to until it's too late?
Building your network. I would say wholeheartedly, building your network would be one of the things that a lot of people neglect. Especially like, let's say you have a job already, right? You already have your job, and this is something I encounter is that I got laid off,
Mm,
and I was like, oh man, I got laid off, and then so I'm in this structure of the corporate environment, and then now I'm out. I find myself outside of it,
mm,
and then I don't have the connections to help me get back into corporate, so that way I can do other things with like my business or like paying bills. So what happens is that if you don't foster those connections while you're doing good, I'll say that while you're doing good, foster those connections, and if you're not doing good, start building them.
mm,
Reason why I say that is because I found myself outside of the corporate environment, so that way, like when I try to network with people, all I can say is I'm unemployed,
mm,
right? And I'm like, like, but if you say, "Hey, I'm a data engineer at Cargill," people looking at you, "Oh, okay, cool." I can build some value with you, and that's how it is in Atlanta, at least, where like you're networking, people will ask you, what do you do, and then you have to tell them that you do something, right?
mm,
Like, hey, I'm a data engineer, or you're a software engineer, project manager, and then if you are trying to build your connections, start telling them the things that you do, and they'll start looking out for you for different positions, and then you'll start gaining more opportunities. All the jobs that I've gained in tech, all the jobs that I've gained have never been through applying. It has been through human interaction, through networking, through a recruiter or somebody reaching out to me and saying, "Hey, I think that you will be the best fit for this job," and I got it.
mm. It's so interesting that you said that because, and I'm curious to kind of like see what anybody else thinks. So whatever you think about that, please let me know in the chat. But I found that my experience is kind of like the exact opposite, right?
Mm,
Of course, I've had a lot of people like um advocate for me, help refer me into companies, and like a lot of times now that I think about it, I usually get into the interview, but it's never worked out. So
mm,
every role that I've gotten, and of course, I've been an entrepreneur for the most part anyway. So the time that I've actually gotten a job, uh, that's only like my second job that I applied to and got right in my over like 10-year career. Most of it is either jobs I created or somebody referred me into. So, but for the most part, like I've really gone that application route. And I guess that's to say, right? Like there's no one path. Of course,
mhm,
the referral might get you into the role quicker because oftentimes, like if there's a soft intro or a warm intro, as they like to call it, that you typically soften the spark path for you rather than going against like 1,200 resumes, right? And hoping
mhm,
you'll survive. But again, it's like if you can even figure out a way to do both, right? Build a relationship just like you're saying, and also applying, I think you almost building like a superpower. But I agree. Like one of the things that someone said on the pod that, you know, really resonated was, uh, your network is something you want to build before you need it, right? Because when you're thirsty, people can tell, right? Like if you're just DMing someone to say, "Hey, how you doing?" and there's no pressure, it's very different from, "Hey, how you doing? Can you refer me for this role?"
All right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's very key. But back to kind of like your career journey and the internships. Can you talk me through like the very first one you got? Because I know, like, of course, people almost like overlook it and talk about it like it's something that's easy. Of course, I didn't go that route, so I don't really know. But I don't imagine that it's something that's easy as well, because there's so much competition there as well. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, man. I mean, that one. So I had the internship at Global Payments,
Mm,
and it was because I had a position at Georgia State working in the career services department. And I remember walking with my mentor, and she was telling me, she was like, "Let's do a walk and talk. I got to go to another meeting, but I really want to be honest with you. Is that, hey, you're about to be a senior, and you haven't had any internships, and you are a computer science major. Like you need to start getting on it." She was holding me accountable, and I'll always remember that because it was some really just honest advice. And I started networking and putting myself out there. I created my LinkedIn, right? Because I was on career services. So eventually, I I heard back from a hiring manager for a job that I had applied for, and she had followed me on LinkedIn and everything. Saw that I was applying for software engineering roles
mm,
and internships. And she said, "Okay, well, let's do an interview." Right?
mm,
We're already connected on LinkedIn. You apply for the job at Global Payments. Let's do it. I got in the interview, and it was really easy, right? And that's a kind of like a trend. It's usually when opportunities come up, it tends to be a little bit easier than everything else. I don't know what it is, right? Of course, not always, but I noticed with my opportunities, they tend to be easier than all the things I've been like neglected from or declined from. But I got the job as an intern, worked as a software engineer intern for I want to say 3 or 4 months, and then my internship was about to end, and I was like, okay, well, I still have another semester to go, so I'm just gonna not have anything, right? But because I did that networking piece, I connected with the director for information security advisory. And we were really cool. He was a really cool guy. I was talking to him through the other interns. He was on like a different floor, but I would always see him. And I went back to his office like it was like the day of my last day.
mm.
And I said, "Hey, um, this is my last day. I really want to say I appreciate you and all the advice that you've given me over my internship." He said, "Hey, you know what? How about this? It's your last day. Do you have anything else coming up for like another internship or a job offer?" I said, "No." "Well, you can build websites, right?" I said, "Yeah, I can build websites." "Well, can you work?" I said, "Yeah, I can work." "All right, cool. Well, send me over your salary. Let me know who your manager is, and you can start on Monday for my team." So I started off again as an intern for information security advisory through just speaking to somebody, and I was there for another 6 or 7 months. So I was there for a long period, almost a full year.
Wow.
Actually, really, yeah, it's like a full year of working at Global Payments as an intern, and then I ended up getting a position with the Home Depot after that.
Mm. That
So,
that is such an amazing story. I don't want to come back to it, but I want to read this comments from Kadesha first. First
mhm.
one is, folks are too scared or intimidated to network, and unfortunately, many go about it one-sided or selfishly. Absolutely. And that's so true. Like, and people can smell it too. Like if you're very transactional in the way that you move, people see that and they don't want anything to do with it, right? You have to be genuine. Like when you genuinely care, I think, I say something that's funny. I'm like, the most selfish thing you can do is to care about other people, because ultimately people start to care about you that way. Right. But if you want to be like, just see me, be about me, and then that's when nobody cares about you because they can smell it and it's off putting. And then these days, when everyone runs their resumes through ChatGPT, it's way harder without strong personal branding and networking. Absolutely. I actually think that personal branding is that one thing in 2025 and beyond, because of ChatGPT, that has almost become inevitable, right? Like you can't, I almost don't think that there's any recruiter that functions now without LinkedIn. Like they go to check out your LinkedIn. If there's no LinkedIn application, they're just gonna ignore it, right? Because why would they do that? Why would they take that chance? And that's what I always tell people. Like if you're building your career, like especially if you're coming from a non-traditional background, if you learn something, let's say you're learning SQL or you learn to write a command or whatever, like put it there. Say, oh, today this is what I did, and with this function, I was able to do X, Y, and Z. Because now, when somebody goes through your timeline, you can see, oh, this person led this person led that. They talked about this, they talked about that. And because there's just that almost history there, you're much more credible than someone who just has a bare land, right? In terms of there's no network, there's no connections. Because a lot of times this is the thing, right? If you have, let's say, 4,000 connection, 4,000 if it's even too much, 500 connections on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
those are 500 people that you're basically telegraphing to say, I've worked in this role, I've done this, I've done that, right? You
Mhm.
could still be lying, right? But the chances of that, at least in the eye of the recruiter, is much lower, right? Versus like if it's just a piece of paper, there's no accountability there. So again, it's just another way that they validate that. And that's just one piece of building that personal brand. There's a million and one other things that you could do to build that, and I think is so important, Kadesha. So thanks for bringing that. But kind
Mhm.
of like back to that initial point about, it's funny. Like I wanted to speak more about data engineering, but I find us really talking about building connections, and I think it's so important. So I'm gonna stay on it. You talk about having first of all, I think the first opportunity was 3 months, right?
Yeah, my first internship was like 3 to 4 months, right around there.
So you got almost double the time just by having one conversation.
Yep.
And you have to think about it, right? Like it wasn't like the person made a rash decision in the moment saying, come work for me, right? They'd probably watched you over a certain period of time. That moment you said you were leaving created urgency. It's like, oh, you mean that's it? No, that's not it. Let me do
Yep.
something in this moment. So even in kind of like the context of what we're saying, it wasn't that one action. Of course, the one action was what made it pay off, but it was probably the other things that you'd done up to that point, right? Taking advice, doing something with it, valuing it, right? Even going to show appreciation for it, right? Played a role. And I'm gonna say this, and I'll let you react to it. One of the things that I tell people, when it comes to mentorship, right, is the importance of, you ask someone a question over LinkedIn or over text or whatever, and then they say, oh, go review this material or go check out this video, and that's it. They never hear from you again. Nobody wants to dedicate their time to help people who, one, there's no feedback loop to know if it's helping or not. And you creating that loop basically made that person see, oh, this person is still learning. I think I could still contribute a bit more. So let them even come in house to learn more, right? Doubling that time. How important is that just from that perspective of that moment, but also just generally for anyone looking to break into tech and looking for advice and looking to leverage people?
Yeah, man. I mean, you, I could not imagine how many people go that approach of just reaching out to somebody on DMs and LinkedIn and expecting like good advice or like a referral. But it's important if you are able to have a connection that will give you that advice or is already in the industry doing exactly what you want to do.
Hmm.
Best way to do that is to actually meet them in person. And how you do that, workforce development organizations or meetup events, networking events, conferences. Those are some things that you can do to be able to meet people so that way you can get some feedback. Because it's really hard for somebody to ignore you in person. Right? Like if you meet them in person and then you reach out to them on LinkedIn, I guarantee you your chances of getting a response back are going to be a lot higher
Mm.
because they know you, and they a lot of the time, if you're in the same group with somebody, they may want to help you, right? If you see somebody all the time. But really, I think that what goes on in something that somebody taught me when I was looking for advice, and I started doing it, which is you can always tell somebody if somebody is serious if you give them a task to do and they actually do it. So if I remember this guy, he gave me, he was a guy who worked at Microsoft, and he said, write a brag sheet about yourself, and then I'll give you a referral. And I thought about it. I was like, you know what? Let me actually go ahead and do this. I wrote a brag sheet about myself, and he actually gave me a referral. Right? Like, I thought that was awesome. Like I followed his steps and what he did, what he asked me to do, delivered it to him, and I received back from it. Right? It's not like he needed a brag sheet, but he was kind of like, hey, maybe make sure that you're actually passionate about this. And sometimes I can say, hey, give me your most updated resume. And then I've done it where like we go over a resume review because I used to work in career services. So I understand like the language of how to do a resume. And I do the resume and say, hey, make all these changes and then send it back to me. And then if you do all those steps that I said, then not only will it help you in your career, but then also I'll be more willing, right, to give you a referral if an opportunity comes up.
Mm.
Because like, hey, you're actually doing something, to actually taking my advice.
It's actually interesting that you mentioned that example specifically because this one has happened to me. Someone reached out to me to help them refer them into a role at my job. And I wasn't even setting up a test. When they sent me the resume, I looked at it and I'm like, hey, why don't you do X, do Y, do Z? Because the role I've looked at, first of all, so think about it. This is me doing extra work on top of what you're already asking me to do. I'm reading the resume, I'm reading the job description, and I'm saying, hey, this is how this may align with this. Let me help you get closer. You have the experience, but you're not tailoring it to what they're asking for. And then I put all this back and send it. This is over 6 months now. So maybe I'll get that resume tomorrow. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's like, how can I even care more than you do? Right? Like, it's like the vibe that you've given now is like, I'm good on it. So, and it's funny, like, because this person came back and was asking me for something else differently. And I just ignored it because it's like, you can't, like, how? You see what I'm saying? Like, how can you not care? And this is the thing that I want most people to realize. It's like, if you think about, this is the way I like to think about it. There's a book I read, I've forgotten what it's called now, but it talks about putting a value on your time, right? So let's say you make, let's say $100,000 a year. Then it means like your hourly rate is X amount, right? And it says like that's one of the ways to become like a high functioning person because then you start to figure out what to watch your time and what you need to delegate so you can take back more productivity. And even if you're not earning that in income, you can take that time and figure out a way, whether it's like personal development or something else that you need to do to make value of that. So if you then flip that back, if you ask somebody, let's say, for example, there's a $50 hourly rate. When you say, can you hop on a call for 30 minutes? You're asking for $25. And think about it, like, it's even way more valuable than $25 to that person, right? Because it just is, right? Like, time is way more precious than money. You can always make money, but you can never make the time back. So are you putting value on it? And ultimately, you can never pay someone like, the person who you're asking to refer you is probably in a better financial position than you are, right? So it's not because they want the money. That's not the goal. But it's like, how can you show? And there's things that you can also give people back, even when you have nothing. This is the funny part. There's things that you can give people that is way more important than money. One of the things I remember you, William, for example, was always supporting, right? Always saying, hey, great show today, great podcast, XYZ, right? And like, you probably don't know this, but based off of that, there's nothing that you can ask me that I won't give. Why? Because you've shown appreciation, you've shown value. And this is what I do to people too. Like, I see a creator I like. Again, it doesn't have to be like, oh, you do this and I have to do that. But if somebody gives you value, give them value back. Because, and sometimes it's feedback, sometimes it's appreciation, sometimes it's just recognition. I see that you're doing this. This is great work, because it means something, and most people don't pay attention to
Mhm.
that. And I think that that's something that can help a lot of people growing up or coming up in their careers. I know we have a bit more comments, so I'm going to go to that and then we'll come back. So facts on networking, yes, sure, John. And then I like the bright sheet idea. That's actually a really good one, because most of these jobs anyway, they always want you to put in like a little word for the person you're referring. So it probably also works out that way. And Kadisha also says most people are lazy and nowadays will probably just ask ChatGPT to write it.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, leverage AI however much that you want, but just make sure that it's not sloppy. That's like the only thing that I have against using AI. Use it all you want, but make sure it's not sloppy. And then last but not least, right? People come to you and want you to do all the work for them. You can say that again. You can say that a million times. Has that also been your experience and people asking you for help or advice or mentorship?
Yeah, that is it. It is exactly how. So I watched a video, and it was from Diary of a CEO, and they were talking about what does it mean when somebody reaches out to you and asks you to be their mentor, and it comes off as it's inorganic. It's not as genuine, right? Because you're asking me to become your mentor versus it just naturally happening. Because the people who I've mentored, I just would talk to. There'd be somebody. It doesn't matter your age, right? They can be younger or older, and I can just give them some advice about the getting into tech, right? I went to the NASB conference in Chicago a few weeks ago, and the National Society of Black Engineers. I went there and I saw this guy. He was like, "Hey, I'm looking for full time positions as a software engineer." And I said, "Okay, cool. Well, I've been in the industry for 6 years. I can give you some advice." We were like talking for a good, I want to say, hour, just about like what I do, how can he get into the industry, and nobody, like, he didn't ask me to do this. It naturally happened via normal conversation. And when somebody reaches out to you, say, "Hey, can you be my mentor?" It may come off as if it's not organic, or it may seem like it's a lot of work, right? But if you go into it and say, "Oh, like, I love your podcast. I love your content. I really gained some insight about something that you said. Can you expand upon it?" Or, "Hey, um, I am looking for opportunities for this type of role. I see that you're like a data engineer. Is there any advice that you can give me?" Not necessarily asking me to become your mentor, but just specifically asking for like targeted advice about a role that I'm already a part of, I'm already in. And it makes it so that way it's not a time sink, and it doesn't make it seem as though it's inorganic. It's just I'm helping you get some insight into a role that you're trying to get.
Hmm. It's so interesting that you mentioned that part, because I want to almost say, like, if you ever feel the need to ask someone to be your mentor, don't. Right? Because ultimately, a lot of times you're asking for full-time commitment where there's no full-time relationship, right? Like, if you've done the work, if you've put in the work, your mentor will appear. There will be your mentor, and you never need to ask for it. The
Yeah.
fact that you even need to ask for it in the first place is problematic, because it's like, meeting someone for the first time and asking for marriage. That's the same way it almost is, right? Because if someone is your mentor, they're personally responsible for you in some way, right? And you can have it um without necessarily even voicing it. There are people who I've never spoken to in person or even online, who I consider mentors, right? Why? Because I'm following what they're doing. I'm modeling myself after them. I see the successes they're having and I'm leveraging. I've never once DM'd them and said, hey, be this or be that. Because I know that the fact that they're already given their gift to the world, like, and this is a thing that comes with it too, is that a lot of people tend to be appreciative. So you see the part I talked about, first of all, like your hourly time being money, right? There's that piece. There's also the piece where I recognize that the earphones you have over your head is money. The microphone you have is money. The thing that's recording this thing is money. The internet that's running it is money. It's costing you a lot, right? Just to be here to have this conversation. So I recognize that if I see your advice and I pay attention to it, I already know like you're already putting in a lot of sacrifices just to be able to put that advice out there, and to look good while doing it. So ultimately, a lot of people miss that, right? And it's like, oh, I'm gonna go again above and beyond. And I don't want to discourage anyone to reach out. One of the things that's so great about tech is building relationships. In fact, I think that's one of the reasons why meeting in person is so important, because it always signals to people. So someone may go off of seeing some content you put out or a video that high and just reach out. I don't think that's organic, just like to use your word, right? But someone who was intentional, who took a flight potentially to get to a place, who booked a hotel, who showed up in person, that's already cost them something. So when you have that access, I know you're not freeloading, and I know it's not an afterthought. Like, you didn't just show up to LinkedIn, scroll past this content on Instagram and see something and say, oh, can you be my mentor? You've actually put in work. And those people tend not to make a treacherous request at the same time, because a lot of time, it costs a lot. So you don't ask for too much at the same time. Two comments from Harry says, and most people are also creative thoughts. I don't fully understand that, but I'll go to the next one. And most guys are looking for full-time opportunity. Yep, I could probably say like full-time full-time mentors, unpaid. You definitely have to figure out a way. I think it's a balance, right? Building relationships, but I think one of the things that you can almost always lead with, and this is probably a book that can help people how to win friends and influence people. I think that can be a great resource, just in terms of like, if you struggle with building relationships or figuring out like how to be valuable. I think every single person, right? You could literally start in your tech career today, like just hired data engineer today, and you're valuable because you're intrinsically valuable as a human being. It's just figuring out like, this person that I'm reaching out to, what is it something that can offer value to them? Is it my time? Is it my attention? Is it my respect? Is it my feed? Is it taking the advice that they give me and going back and actioning it and just letting them know that, hey, I'm I'm doing something? Because there's something that's also interesting, right? Is that, again, a lot of successful people that I've seen around me, they like to create more success. And no matter how successful you are, you can't do that by yourself. You need people who are looking to succeed to be able to build more success from, right? So that is something that you could be to someone else. You could be someone else's success story, right? In that, not only was I able to build myself, but this person who was waiting and hungry to learn, I was able to impart knowledge into them, and they also went and made something of themselves. I think that that's key.
Yeah. And can I add on to that too?
Yes, please, please.
And I'd say if you do want to go the route of just having like a person to mentor you, right? I would suggest meeting people in person, but then also there are mentorship programs out there. And I've attended mentorship programs for like McClinton Scholars, and then also like Big Brother, Big Sister. So like they have mentorship programs, the Boys and Girls Club, like for the younger people out there. Like they actually have mentors out there who will like help you to get your LinkedIn together, or just give you advice, get your resume together, get you some clothes so that way you can go into the interview. Like for people who have kids as well, who may be watching this, who may be trying to get into the first job or into the tech space, like having a mentor is extremely important. And you're going to have many mentors as you get older, right? Like I've had so many mentors and people who have given me advice and coaches and champions along the way. And it's helped me to get to where I am now. I wouldn't be the same person that I was talking today had I not had the mentors. Another quote that I heard was that networking is only one letter away from not working. So if you're not networking, you are
Mm.
most likely not working.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one right there.
Mhm.
That's a really good one. Um, so you've been featured in like different publications, right? I know Business Insider, Shoutout
Right.
Atlanta. You know, how first of all, how did that feel? And like, does do moments like that give you like, the fire and the validation sometimes to almost want to do more?
Most definitely. Yeah, it does. It's a great feeling every time it happens. It happened out of nowhere, right? And this is also a networking piece. I have a YouTube channel, Before the Billions, and Business Insider saw one of my videos about me interview or preparing for an interview with Meta, reached out to me on my LinkedIn, not on my LinkedIn, on my Instagram, and then it was just a random person, and then they said, "Hey, I have an opportunity for you." I said, "Okay, cool." Reached out to them on DMs, had a conversation. I'm featured on Business Insider now, right? Based off of that, and because I created content, right? But it's always it's a great feeling to have more. Like I was recently featured in my company's website,
Mm,
Cargill. They featured me for a day in the life of a data engineer,
mm,
and I was like, "Oh, I would never expected that." And it's like just getting that opportunity makes you just feel so much better about not only yourself but then also about the things that you talk about to provide value to others, because
mm,
in the articles I'm giving people advice on how they can become a data engineer
mm,
or like my journey, and maybe they can gain some insight from it,
mm,
and some maybe even some pitfalls that I fell into that they may want to avoid,
mm,
right? Like full transparency, last year I was laid off as a data engineer and I made a series about it. And I was just like, okay, well, I got laid off and I was out of work for 6 months. And through that, it gave me the fire, like how you said, like the fire, the motivation, the to build that discipline to just show up every day, to
mm,
show up, create content, and it has yielded great results
mm,
because I'm being featured in publications. I'm getting speaking engagements. I'm showing up to conferences completely for free because of the work that I had to put in for that half of a year. Right? Like I had to put in a lot of work to be able to get to where I am now, but it's extremely important that if you're trying to achieve in life, is that you have to show up, put in the work, and then show people why they should care about you and the work that you provide.
mm. I know we have you're dropping bars, and I'm not even the one who said that, right? It's people in the comments shouting you out. So I'm gonna go and take some of those comments now. Kedisha saying, when people I don't know reach out to me and provide some copy and paste DM, I never respond. The laziness is obvious, as it should, as it should. And LinkedIn user, unfortunately, I'm not able to see your name. I just joined. I had class. Welcome to the stream. Tonight we're hosting William, the founder of Before the Billions and a data engineer. So we've been talking data engineering, but most importantly, we've been talking about the impact people can have in your career. And yeah, okay, William dropping bars. I agree. Absolutely. And that's great advice. Here's some great points. But I think you mentioned, right, that you had some pitfalls, and this user had had some questions, right? So can you talk about some of those pitfalls?
Right. Like I said, the layoff really was a big pitfall for me because I mean it hit me to where I was like, okay, well, what do I do now? Right? Like, okay, we're trying to find a new job. Usually, if you get laid off or you get fired or something like that, you may get a job within 2 to 3 months, right? 2 to 3 months is okay, right? You may have enough money saved up or, but most of the time, people can't, and the majority of people cannot go 1 month without going into debt. Like, if they miss one paycheck, they end up going into debt in some form or fashion. But I went 6, and it's because the job market was extremely difficult in 2024. And I found myself trying everything because I didn't have a specific plan. But I reached out to my mentors, and some of the things that they said was because they said you don't have a job right now because you don't have a plan.
Mm,
And sometimes you need to go and do things that are not cut out for you, and not specifically that you're not good at, but not cut out meaning there is no specific structure or specific requirement. Sometimes you need to go out there and do something that you may not have thought that you needed to do. So
mm,
what did I do? I started going to networking events, conferences. I started going and volunteering. I started teaching classes. I started
mm,
about SQL. I started going and joining organizations like the workforce development organizations, like a Technologists of Color, or I started joining organizations like the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. So I put myself out there. I even started exercising more and
mm,
meeting people that way who gave me some insight, who were also in the tech industry,
mm,
and through like my run club Heels for Atlanta. So I'm over here in everything, and it's a good thing and it's a bad thing at the same time. It costs a lot of money to do that. First off, right? It costs, like, conferences are not cheap. Networking events are not cheap. You can go to a free networking event and still pay a lot of money because they have you got to drive, right?
Well, you
Or
gotta fly.
you got to fly somewhere. Um, for people who drink, they got drinks there too. Like, there's a whole bunch of things that it costs you money. But I noticed I was spending money, but then also um I was not going to things that were helping me along my way. And so I started, and this is important, is that if you ever feel overwhelmed, you're most likely just overcommitted to things that may not matter. So I found myself overwhelmed because I'm going to everything and I'm spending a lot of money. I spend a lot of time. I can't be in 2 places at once. What's a place I can eliminate from my schedule and then focus on something that will help me along my path and my journey
Mm,
of becoming a data engineer again?
mm,
And what happened was I started speaking, started getting the engagements and started getting featured. And then that yielded me the results of getting a new job as well, because and also posting content on
mm,
LinkedIn and YouTube.
mm,
That actually directly helped me to get the job that I'm at now, because the recruiter saw my LinkedIn and said, "Oh, I just love that post." And it was a post about me running,
mm,
running at the run club. That
mm,
literally had nothing to do with data engineering. I'm running at the run club, and they loved the post so much that they wanted to give me an interview for Cargill as a data engineer. Interview process went so well. They really cared about me. They cared about my experience and my expertise, and they extended an offer to me extremely quickly, like the very next day, and I accepted the day after that. I thought that was overall the best thing, because I like something that was supposed to be completely separate from my journey, but actually helped me along the way. But yeah, that's what I would say. I think that the pitfalls is, understanding your plan and how to execute it.
Hmm. Hmm. That is that is so crucial. We've gotten a lot of chats, a lot of comments since you started speaking because you've been dropping a lot of gems. So we'll go through them very quickly. Um, Love this. Thank you so much, bro. Can't wait to have you on the stream as well. Um, and then LinkedIn user, sorry your name is not popping up for some reason, and says maybe I missed this, but what motivates you to mentor others, and how do you find the balance so that you don't get overwhelmed?
Yeah, I can answer that. So I mean, I mentor a lot of people. I'll say that because I go to a lot of things, right? And then sometimes people just ask me for advice, and I just give it to them. But then we connect on LinkedIn, and I see their content, and then I see them all the time. I know a few. I know a few people, right? And this is interesting. So I started before the billions in 2020, so 5 years ago, right? Well, I started the channel for a while, but I really started making content in 2020, and it was about me getting laid off from Home Depot. And I was like, I don't want anybody else to go through the same mistakes or the same issues that I went through. So I'm going to make this channel to give people advice,
Hmm.
right, about how they can get into tech. And people would reach out to me and they say, hey, I love this content and I really want to get into tech. So then when I started, I would, reach back out to these people, right? And they would say, like, oh, I'm looking for a job as a software engineer or whatever it is. I'll give them the advice, and they're still looking for a job 5 years later, right, in
Hmm.
tech.
Hmm.
But what motivated me was when I run into the people who are actually serious, like how we went through before. They're serious about getting into tech. They're passionate about it. They really want to achieve this, and then they actually put in the work.
Hmm.
And it just makes me feel better having to see their journey as well, because I give my journey. I tell people the things I go through. I love to see when others are able to go from a bad situation of being outside of where they want to be in the industry and are able to achieve it through their own way, right? They may take some insight from what I did, and then they may be able to avoid some mistakes or may be able to go down the right path. And I've had people reach out to me and say, hey man, I loved your content, and I've been able to get a job because of your content.
Hmm.
So you have people who are not serious, and then you have people who are serious who actually do achieve this. I get motivated by the people who follow through and get to the other side.
I couldn't have said it any better than you did. Like people who are driven, because it's so much funny. Like energy is contagious, right? It's literally like a contagion. Like sometimes, as a professional who is maybe mid to senior level, like complacency can creep in sometimes, right? Like you can feel like you made it, but you can get so much energy off of someone who's just discovering the concept, who's just breaking in, who's just figuring it out. You're like, wow, I think I'm off my game a little bit. I might as well, and there's that, right? Like you can take energy off of other people learning. And even sometimes by teaching someone who's engaged, you challenge yourself to even dig deeper and learn. And I think that's that value. It's like you energize people literally when you're not only saying you want to learn, but you're actually committed to it.
Right.
Um, and then I think this was a funny question, a comment about when you had mentioned that, conferences can be expensive. It said, the parking alone can hurt your pockets.
Yes. Let me add on to that real quick, because I had ran into this issue because I went to this conference, or I went to this networking event, and it costed $50 for parking. And I live in Atlanta. Sometimes if you go somewhere and it's a nice establishment, they charge you 40, like there's no parking lot. So you gotta pay $40 for valet, and then you gotta pay $40 to get in. It's crazy. But sometimes you have to be really careful with your pockets. Like my granddad, my granddad had instilled this into me is
Mm.
to avoid parking fees as much as possible. So if you see me like parking 2 or 3 blocks down the street and walking, I'm gonna do
Mind
it,
your
right?
mind your business.
Right. I'm walking 2 or 3 blocks. My granddad taught me that as a
Same,
kid.
same. I don't like to pay for parking. I mean, I will pay for some parking, right? But not expensive parking for sure.
Yeah. So I went to this one event. It was in Buckhead, and I don't know if you're in Atlanta.
Oh yeah, I've been there a couple of times actually.
Yeah, so I went to this event in Buckhead, and it was trying to charge me like $40 to park. I was like, you know what? In Buckhead, I know this one spot that's free, but it is like a mile away. Went over there, parked, and it got on a bird scooter to the bird scooter just because I didn't feel like paying for the fee. I was like, $40 is crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is. I've also done it. I've taken the Uber back.
Right.
I'm not paying for that. No way. $20 is my maximum. That's where my cutoff is.
Right.
Harry also says that's a powerful realization. Having a plan is crucial, but sometimes taking action, a plan is fully formed, can open unexpected doors. I agree. I agree with that completely, right? And I think it goes to that same saying, right? Like everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face, I
Right.
guess. And then Hey Alicia, so I imagine like this is something to do with like the streaming data. So maybe William can help us look at at that pipeline later.
Right.
But yeah, thanks for really sharing. It's really great rocking with you. And then we have another comment from Shraddha. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. I've been applying for a while, internships. All I received is rejection email. Although I applied with referrals, do you have any advice that can help?
Yeah, I mean, I went the referral route too. Sometimes referrals don't work either, right? Especially in this market.
Yeah.
And really, I got this from the people at Torque, and which is owned by Randstad. They were talking about how it's not about it used to be about who you know, not what you know, but now it's about who knows you.
Mm,
So yeah, Taylor is the one who I don't know if you know Taylor Desson. He's the one who
yeah.
coined that,
Yeah.
who I first heard of that from. And I thought about it. I was like, you know what? This is my time to be able to expand on my LinkedIn, right? Because that's how I actually got the job I'm at now.
Mm,
And I'm not expecting people to become content creators, right? Or try to become influencers to get a job in tech.
nope.
But it could be something as simple as updating your LinkedIn so that way at least you have 100%, or you're like what is it called, an all-star,
Hmm.
to make sure that your LinkedIn is fully like ironed out, like you have all the features enabled and you have a good bio. But then also you engage with the content. You may not be a content creator, but you can engage with like software engineering content, and then you connect with people who are software engineers in the industry. You meet people who are software engineers in the industry. You apply and you reach out to people who are at staffing agencies like a Randstad or an Insight Global, or like all these different staffing agencies that they have. I think Brooksource is another one, right? There's a lot of opportunity out there if you show up.
Absolutely.
If you are somebody who is like tries to hide in the shadows, like they you get on LinkedIn to just apply to jobs, like they got referral and still got denied. I got referrals and still got denied back last year, right? And they were like, "Oh yeah, it's like my best friend, right?" Like we worked together for long periods of time. I got a referral, still got denied.
And
So good.
no, sorry, I was gonna add to that because literally, like, I've been, there's referrals and then there's referrals, right? There's referrals where you go to the company portal and just put someone in. That's that referral. But then there's a referral where you can talk to the hiring manager and say, "Hey, I have this candidate," And I've
Mhm.
had those conversations, right, in the past couple of years where someone told me, you know what, don't even worry about it. Like, I already got like people who come to me like you did, like 10 of them. So if you add it, it's just gonna add to the pile. And to be honest, we've already done the first round of the screen. I think we already have like 3 strong candidates we're going with. So it's like it's not always gonna work. And I love that idea that you gave. In fact, someone said something similar, right, a couple years ago. It was a LinkedIn expert. It's like recruiters spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, stand out where they hang out, right? You want to still I think everybody's brand has to speak for them in a way. And if you think about it, we all have brands. It's just that now, because of this proliferation of online media, it's now important to have that visibly. And I agree with what you said. You don't have to be a creator, but there's at least thousands of, I don't know what role, but let's choose data engineers. There are thousands of data engineers who share content. Are you reposting what they said with your own thoughts? Are you commenting in the comment section? Are you putting even keywords? So if someone is looking, because think about it, there's reverse keyword search, how people are finding roles on LinkedIn, not the ones that
Mhm.
get posted in the job section, but the ones that are getting that people are writing about saying, oh, we're hiring for this role. Imagine, I can imagine recruiters are doing the flip side of that, which is like they're looking for people talking about data engineering. Is your name coming up? Right? Because again, this is what I talk about purpose and mission. If your goal, if you're really committed to finding this job, are you doing everything that you can find it? Is your portfolio
Mhm.
stacked? Like, have you checked every box? Because sometimes, like, doing a lot of one thing is probably not going to serve you as doing a good number of everything, right? Is building your personal brand, building a portfolio, having a good story to tell, right? Because there's something funny, right? That I've seen, maybe because I've also been in startups, so I could say some things, you know, kind of like 2 points. One was about the mentorship piece. People always say something as to startup founders. It's like when you ask for money, you get advice. But when you ask for advice, you get money. Just kind of like means that
Mhm.
a lot of the time when you think the only thing that your business needs is money and you're asking people for money, they're gonna give you advice, right? Because it's like you're not seeing the full picture. But a lot of times when you say, oh, this is what I'm stuck on, if we unlock this, then our business is going to do X, Y, Z. Now the investor sees your business and they're like, oh my God, this guy's really going to kill it. How can I write you a check so I could be part of this thing? So it kind of like works kind of intuitively just with the whole mentorship thing is like show interest, show passion, and deliver feedback when you've actioned it. But I think the flip side even of this about having the thing is with investments, even people who say we don't invest in this sector, we don't invest in that sector, when they see a business that's going to the moon, everybody wants to be a part of it. So
Mhm.
in talent, figure out how you're that 1% talent, right? Where when people see the packaging on you, they're like, you know what? I don't care whatever's going on. I want that person to work at my company. Because that's literally what worked for you, right? A recruiter
Yeah.
saw you, they saw your 360, they're like, why is that person not working for us? And that's kind of like your story into that company. So I think that's a big takeaway for everybody on this call tonight or on this stream. It's like, how do you become the talent that everybody wants?
Exactly. I mean, and it could be it could be so many different things, so many different routes of getting there. But everybody's journey is going to be different.
Mm,
And I think that understanding, even if you don't go down a specific path, understanding the ways of getting in is extremely important.
mm,
I mean, think about it. If you got a job through applying, right?
mm,
Applying for the job. I got a job through networking,
mm,
right? Somebody may get a job through, something else, right? So, it's always going to be different, but understand that if something and I think what happens, right? I made the comment earlier is that usually the opportunity that you've been looking for is going to come easy.
mm.
Right, like with what you said, like when you apply for that job, even if the interview wasn't necessarily easy, the opportunity it happened, right? You were able to get to the other side. You put
Yep.
in a lot of work already, right? The hard part was putting in the work. When you get the opportunity, it's easy. You already got it,
Yep.
and never think that somebody's taking a chance on you. You are the best person for that job at that time.
Yep.
Right? If somebody else was better, they would have gone with them. And we see that all the time when it says, "Unfortunately, you didn't get it. It was somebody better," right?
Yep.
But when your opportunity comes, you are the best one.
And that's actually that's space and time. You like when you said that, that's why I was smiling because of course, like you get misdirections all the time where like you think you have a good interview and then like they hit you with that, no, thank you, right? But
Mhm.
a lot of the time when that job is gonna click, you almost know it. Like it just that's a way it flows. It could be 150 round interview, but as you go through it, you know for sure like this is gonna be yours. And like that's the thing.
Mhm.
It's like if you put yourself out there enough, if you do all the hard work, if you do the heavy lifting, that moment is gonna come, right? After so much failure, after so much rejection, it eventually comes. So I think that's something that I've learned in my journey. I've heard a lot from people who've come to to this podcast, and I feel that validation now that you're saying it. Right, the one that gets through almost feels like why did y'all make me go through this for the past 6 months or 3 months or however long, right? Because this was always meant to be.
Yep, you already put in the work.
Yep.
I mean, you
Yep.
already did everything. You just needed to get to this point. Every no just gets you closer to that yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It looks like we've run out of questions and comments, but I'm just gonna read this last one. I think it's from Alicia. She says, "I used to live in Atlanta, and I still have PTSD from the traffic and parking."
Yes.
And it's funny because one of the cities that I actually love that I definitely don't mind moving to is Atlanta, but I guess we'll see. But thank you so much. I don't know. Typically, we give you an opportunity to shout out whoever you want to shout out. Any last piece of advice? So there you go.
Right. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for having me up here, Jawan. I really do appreciate it because, I mean, I've been watching your content and I was like, okay, I finally got the opportunity to come. Right, the opportunity came, right, and it was easy. It was easy when it came, right. Um, so I want to give a huge shout out as well to the BTB squad, the Before the Billion squad. Really do appreciate the people who were in the chat who came in. I want to give a huge shout out to people who are watching the live stream right now, but then also the people who are watching the replay. Um, I mean, I've been in the industry for 6 years as a data engineer. Some of the things that I've learned is that a lot of companies are doing skill-based hiring. It's not about necessarily certifications, it's not necessarily about how pretty your resume is. Really, what they're trying to do is they're trying to hire you for your skill set. And if they like you, that's a plus. Um, but please go ahead and, of course, check me out on. You can follow me on my LinkedIn is in the description as well, and then also on my YouTube channel Before the Billions. I've been putting out content for 5 years, been in the industry for 6. If you're, and also, can I add on this little point for
Please, please.
people? The skills that people are looking for a data engineer, just real quick, you have to know how to code, but I'll be honest with you, is that you're not going to be coding in the same way that a software engineer does. So you will be using like a Python, a SQL, and you may be using it every single day, but not to the same frequency that like a software engineer would do. And then also understand cloud technologies like an AWS, a Azure, or a GCP or a Google Cloud Platform. Those like cloud technologies are in right now. Understand them, right? Learn, do some labs, do some of the quick starts that are completely for free for you that are available for you on their websites. I would suggest doing those things if you're trying to become a data engineer, because there are a lot of technologies that companies use. If you can learn those technologies and provide value and show them that you know how to do this, then you'll be able to get more opportunities to become a data engineer. So those are the skills I would say. Learn the tools and the skill sets, and you can also look this up on the job description if you're applying for jobs as well, and try and learn, if not all the technologies that they have, at least 70 to 80%.
Hmm. Nah, that part you had to have said it. You had to have said it, and that is so cool because that's some of the, in fact, those are the things that I think a lot of people should be looking at, right? I think anyone who's even getting into tech anyway should know a bit about SQL and Python. And I think it's just validation that, with everything that's going on, it's such a crucial and very important skill at this moment. I know we went this usually an hour. We've gone like an hour 17. To be
Yeah.
honest, I could go another one because it's just really, really good. And I think everybody has been amazing. Big shout out to Alicia. It's really great having you. Shout out to Shraddha for asking the question. Shout out to Harry for all of the amazing comments and even like almost paraphrasing and helping us keep track of some of the amazing things that you said. And Kadisha, you definitely like the rock star, always supporting and giving a lot of shout out. We're gonna drop all of the links. So the link, especially for YouTube, we're gonna drop the link to your YouTube there, and also the LinkedIn. Go follow William if you have interest in tech, data engineering, or anything else tech related. I think is such an amazing person and it shares like really great content. That has been the show for tonight. Working in Tech, the live stream. We bring it every single Thursday. We bring actual tech professionals working in tech to give you the insight on their specific career journeys, how they started, what interested them, what they what got them excited, but also what were the challenges, right? It's never not challenging, but I think it's always worth it. That's kind of like the two sides to that coin. We've all gone through our own, piece of it. Like every single person who's winning in tech you see today kind of like has a little, behind the scenes drama that they've gone through, but it's always worth it. And I think that's the biggest lesson to take away. That's been the show for tonight. We'll see you on next week for another episode of Working in Tech. Thanks, everyone. Bye.